Welcome to the Square Developer Podcast. I'm your host, Richard Moot, Head of Developer Relations at Square. And today I'm joined by Sophia Goldberg, who is the co-founder and CEO of Ansa. Sophia, would you be so kind as to give us a little intro about yourself and Ansa to let all of our listeners learn a little bit more about what it is that Ansa is and, about you?
Happy to. And thanks for having me, Richard. So I'm like Richard said, the co-founder CEO of Ansa. I've spent the better part of the last decade building in payments. So I was at a company called Adyen across commercial and product roles. I also wrote the book, The Field Guide to Global Payments, to help anyone learn payments a bit better. And here at Ansa, we're a stored value wallet as a service or closed loop payments infrastructure platform to let any brand or platform launch customer balances. So that can look like the Starbucks in-app payment experience. That can also look like the backend of transportation systems, microtransactions for gaming, and everything and the like. But especially we've been building the last few years in the food and bev and retail space.
Very cool. And so you've built a lot of your integrations on Square and built a lot of this stuff for Square sellers. But one thing I want to dig into with that is maybe tell us more about what is a closed loop wallet?
Yeah, it's a niche part of payments infrastructure and the payments ecosystem, but a really important one. And so closed loop really just means where funds can be spent. And so a wallet like the Starbucks wallet, say, or for some of our brands that are on Square that we've built for, closed loop means the customer adds prepaid funds, the brand can fund that wallet with incentives, and those funds and that balance can only be spent with that brand. And so in turn, that helps drive retention, frequency, really stickiness, but also on the brand side, reduces cost of payments, drives cash flow, and can kind of become this really virtuous cycle of retention, loyalty, and customer lifetime value.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, one of the things that I know for particularly say coffee shops is, you have these low ticket receipts and so it's you're actually in terms of percentage of fees that you're incurring on each sale is a little bit higher when looking at it marginally. So how I'm guessing this sort of helps mitigate that in many ways because you can then sort of preload with these things and you're not incurring this on every single sale that a coffee shop's making.
Exactly. And so for brands that have high frequency and lower average tickets, we call them HULT merchants, HULT, habitual use, low transaction value, which coffee shops or bakeries are a great example of. If you have a $4 latte, which unfortunately in San Francisco, I can't find a $4 latte anymore, that brand might effectively be paying up to 10% in fees because the fixed fees of every payment really add up. You're paying probably 20 to 50 cents no matter how large of a brand you are. And so by having a customer prepay into a balance and say, add $25 to spend over 5 coffees over the course of a month, that means you're only hitting those fees on that first time. You have the benefit of that float in the meantime, and you're also guaranteeing that I'm going to come back 4 more times, enjoy my coffee, and you're going to be saving about $1 just on that one customer that month.
And so I'm curious, you've been in the payments space, for a while now. What kind of really sparked that motivation towards building Ansa and building this solution?
It started to come up earlier in the pandemic when I was seeing more and more different types of commerce trying to catch up and meet us where we were, all stuck inside our homes and apartments. And it kind of tapped into an observation I've been having that commerce and payments have continued to diverge, especially in the US. There's so many more different types of brands, merchants, customer experiences. We're using our phones even more. Even in-store payments have an e-commerce experience or element, whether you're maybe at, say, a kiosk or on your mobile phone. So all of the lines are blurring. And I saw time and time again, merchants not being able to actually support the customer experience they wanted, because payments was often kind of the stick in the mud for them of what they could innovate and build and launch. And I'm a bit of a purist. I really love payments, and I really love that our role is commerce enablement. And that just didn't seem to make a lot of sense. And so actually in the early days, we thought this was going to be a creator economy payment platform use case to enable online microtransactions. So think busking in the subway, but how do you do that digitally, which is growing and happening all over the place. And we couldn't find an infrastructure platform to really easily build that on. And so started pulling at strings and realized there's a big there. And for many types of brands, but especially in the restaurant area, cost of payments is often their second highest costs as a business. And so any way that we can help realign unit economics, but have technology that really works inside their ecosystem was kind of like the gap we found and where we started to build and grow.
So I'm curious, like even like, digging more granularly, like to like sort of like day one, week one, month one, whatever it is, like, when you have this idea and you were like first trying to like sort of test this out, like give us a sense for like how you kind of got that like 0 to 1 moment and how did you like start to grow from there?
Yeah. So we knew from early on our technology was going to be very API focused.
Hmm.
And we also knew that starting out, my co founder JT and I were two people at a WeWork in San Francisco. And so the companies that implement APIs don't typically buy from companies that are two people. And so we started thinking about the very famous adage, do things that don't scale. How can we help brands that our product can be useful for, but maybe don't have the resources or infrastructure today to otherwise work with us? And so actually our first customer that went live is a Square customer out of the East Bay who, I mean, phenomenal coffee, really awesome
Hmm.
team, really great brand, and really like forward thinkers on experimenting. They care a lot about brand and their customers and their customer experience. And so we did the thing that didn't scale, and we thought, okay, well, if they would like to use our product and we would love to work with this team locally, what if we just do something crazy and build them an order ahead app? Which was not and isn't really our core business, but
Hmm.
thanks to actually the Square docs, we were able to build an order ahead app that existed fully on top of their Square stack. And I don't even think we had to talk to your team until quite a ways into the project and the build. And we were able to build it in a way that they didn't have additional lift or process because it lived alongside their entire ecosystem, which for them obviously is Square. And for us, it meant we had this piece of like software and this really great early design partner to be able to test and iterate with.
That's great. And so like I'm curious like on the part, like what part of that felt like the most not scalable? Was it just that like you're building this sort of like bespoke app for one customer and then like trying to figure out like what you learned along the way?
It definitely was the initial impetus was, or the concern was, we don't want to be this like turn into a dev shop, which I think every early stage software company, there's a fine line between building custom for your design partners because you need them to have a reason to take a risk, and the fine line of what are we building that's scalable and can be used by a dozen, 100 other brands like them.
Hmm.
And so that was kind of constant push me pull you. But what we ended up learning, I think, was so valuable because if we had had a first customer who owned their entire app and use our APIs and docs and just ask some questions, we wouldn't have the same understanding of what that stack looks like for a brand, what those
Hmm.
considerations are. Sometimes we call it like, we can say it's really easy to integrate us, but we only know like the iceberg above the water. We got such a great insight into what's below the water for a brand or a
Hmm.
coffee brand of I didn't know the acronym KDS, Kitchen Display System, and how all of those data elements flow. And
Hmm.
all of those learnings have compounded to help us grow with both other Square brands or brands on Square, but also, throughout the ecosystem and larger brands with like more patchworked stacks.
Yeah. No, I mean, it makes so much sense. Like, I can definitely like vouch for, I mean, granted, I know that I probably have a different perspective doing developer relations here. I spent like the first year not knowing what QSR meant. And I thought this was just like some sort of fintech term that I'm familiar with. It's like in digging into like a real business and like sort of getting your hands dirty with them, you really start to see like the things that they're actually concerned with. Like, I know like here at Square, we're very much about like trying to get out of a business's way. They don't want like the payments to be slowing them down or being front and center for like the customer interactions. They should fade into the background and like allow them to just run their business and save them time. But one of the things that I think, because, you say order ahead, and the most eye-opening thing that I've even found with people who are having like an order ahead farm, like when they're trying to manage like Uber Eats, DoorDash, Postmates, and like seeing the tablet farms that they used to have in the back where like somebody's just sitting there pressing buttons and trying to like feed tickets and be like, oh yeah, accept orders everywhere. And, that's when we saw a solution around like order manager, but like, you're never going to like understand that until like you actually see like, well, what is it that you're using? Like, and how do we help augment that and enhance that?
Yeah, I think for that, what always comes to mind is that scene in the recent season of The Bear, where they accidentally turn pre-orders on for
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
order
Oh,
ahead.
that felt way too real. Way too real.
I think the other really interesting learning as someone who's always been on the tech software side and not often even dealing with customers that had like physical operations was
Mm-hmm.
how to deal with like the food items and how to have up to date inventory. And I think it's a problem even Starbucks hasn't been able to solve. And we had so many
Mm-hmm.
roundabout conversations being like, well, surely this is something software can solve. And then being like, it's really hard for software to solve that because the bakery says they send you 20 croissants. There's actually 19 in the box. One falls, another one someone, hands to a great customer. And so your system says 20. The box is actually 17.
Mm-hmm.
Someone orders it ahead, but someone else in line gets it before them. Like all of those things we wouldn't have understanding or empathy of if we hadn't had to actually go kind of bare metal to launch with them.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree with you more. The amount of times that I've actually talked to like various Square sellers or friends who are running businesses, doing inventory counts is like one of those things where like, I think everyone thinks that there's got to be like, some sort of like awesome solution to this. And it's like, I mean, the human element is a huge factor here of like, hey, you messed up on this order, or, oh, actually we like accidentally spilled something on all these cups, so we had to throw them away. And, so yeah, there's like all of these like wonderful, like little things that you can learn about. And then you can start to find like, hey, this is actually something where we can actually build a solution and help. And so, I'm going from the coffee shop to a closed loop wallet. Where was like that like sort of like light bulb moment in there that kind of went like, oh, this is actually where we think they can actually really benefit from this?
Yeah, so we always knew at the start it was a payment solution that we were building, and we're payment people. I'm a giant payments nerd. I think what we learned along the way was that and I think another great Square customer was another early customer, Compass Coffee, out of the DC area, and I remember getting this like GChat message from their CMO, basically saying, and this was maybe over a year ago now, Sophia, you're the only one that cares about payments. We care about retention. And I like need to like frame it because it was such an aha, like what you said a few minutes ago of it's a payment tool, but really it's a retention solution. And so
Mm-hmm.
a lot of what we've ended up building in the past year is what we call our incentive engine. And so it's all of or we sometimes call it loyalty with a little L, but like all of the
Mm-hmm.
tools that a brand needs to help drive adoption of the wallet to make it a no-brainer also for the customers to adopt. And so I think we knew it was never going to be the type of tender type that's set and forget, like, offering Apple
Mm-hmm.
Pay and Google Pay is a lower bar to drive adoption than a closed loop branded wallet might be. And so we started building more and more into what tools can every brand that we work with use, regardless of, say, loyalty platform, but we do, use the Square loyalty APIs for our Square merchants as well.
And so as you got through like those first few customers, like where did you start seeing like the ability to like really start like scaling this to like more and more types of businesses? Like, because it sounds like you initially sort of figured it out with like the quick service, smaller like coffee shop type thing, and then how has that sort of changed as you've gone into like different verticals?
Yeah, so we're still pretty heavily focused on food and bev.
Mm-hmm.
We started moving up market a lot more to, hundreds of location franchised brands.
Mm-hmm.
They have more resources in terms of people to focus on individual like niche aspects, like core loyalty program can have a whole team, but the day-to-day and the pains of that kind of brand is the same whether you have 6,000 locations. You just have different resources to deal with it or to kind of scale it. I think the other use case we saw and started coming up for us that was a bit more unexpected was platforms and marketplaces, which hadn't been one that we initially, I think, had a list of like 14 verticals we could serve, everything from toll and parking through to, microtransactions online and fuel. But that was interesting inbound we started getting and have launched with. And that's pretty interesting for how can a platform, and as you guys know, spectacularly like with Cash App Pay, which is both closed loop and open loop, and maybe more of a 201 payments topic than this podcast is for, there's real value in a platform like, say, Square having their own wallet for funds to be used across the platform. And so we're seeing use cases like that come up. And then marketplaces, right? Like a seller is also a buyer on a lot of marketplaces because there are a lot of, niche interest group marketplaces like trading cards or, knitting, musical instruments. And how can they build that flywheel and keep funds on the platform, drive that retention and repeat usage?
Yeah, no, definitely. And so I'm curious, like, what are like the things, what would you say is like the lesser known benefit of adopting like a closed loop wallet for a brand? Like, what would be like the unexpected like benefit that they might get and not really initially be thinking about?
I think the data, honestly. We haven't figured out the perfect way to talk about it, but it's another lens through which to view data and your customer's behavior. And that is really powerful when combined with all of the other data a customer has, or a brand has with a customer. Sorry. And so what that means in reality is you have a new tool for your marketing team to engage with a customer, to drive spend and usage. And so for us, the way we've kind of productized that a little bit is we call it the Ansa portal, but that's where our customers log in and manage everything from reconciliation, reporting, triaging customer complaints, and say refunds, to also creating incentive campaigns. We have a data platform that we call custom user segmentation, and they're able to go in and say, I want to look at all customers with a balance over $20 who haven't spent in 30 days. So that's high intent. They have funds. It's basically from consumer psychology, whether we call it girl math or sunk cost fallacy. It's, free for them to come order again, but, soft churn risk if they haven't visited in 30 days. And so being able to create that segment and push that out. And so, for example, we update segments into Square segments every night. So we've used your APIs for that. So they can create wallet-based segments in our platform, push that into their Square marketing stack, and specifically target those customers with incentives, reminders. They can know based on the data they know in your platform. Hey, Sophia really loves I really love the rose mocha in February. So like the rose mocha, you didn't see her in January, reminder it's coming back and she's balanced to spend. And so I think that data piece is so much a powerhouse part of it that is pretty delightful when we get to start showing our customers how to use it and how to utilize it.
Yeah. I mean, like, that's just so powerful because I imagine that you have like a much more direct connection on like tracking your ROI on your marketing campaigns, because you're like, hey, we know like what their total balance is. We know like they're totally able to purchase these things. So like it's there, and like we just need to give them that little nudge. And so it's like it's so much more powerful to be able to draw that direct connection.
Exactly. And on that ROI point, another like tool within our system is expiring bonus dollars. And so everything we do in our system is dollar or currency based rather than points based. We live alongside points based systems really well. And so what that can look like is, hey, Richard, haven't seen you in a while. We threw $5 in your balance for, pastry on us next time you visit. It's good for the next week. And that means it drives FOMO, it drives some urgency for you to go spend it. But if you don't, that can flow back into the marketing budget. And so from an accounting side, you don't have ballooning liabilities of outstanding balance that you've spent. But also that means they can, try that $5 elsewhere and see if, maybe someone else is more likely to re-engage.
Yeah, that just sounds so powerful. Changing gears a little bit, I wanted to talk a little bit about like your tech stack. Like, so how did that first start? Like, what were the technologies that you were initially building with?
Yeah. So both my co-founder and I had done a lot of like COVID thinking solo before we linked up. And so we kind of like to say like day one, we hit the ground running with like a lot of intention. He had kind of had an indie hacking project on the side at his while he was at Google before we started Ansa full time together. And so he had a lot of experimentation with stacks. So we knew what we wanted from day zero, which was awesome on the business side to have someone that was really high conviction and knew why. And so, our database is, we built our core ledger from the ground up and have a Postgres database, and backend is fully in Go. And we really picked that because it's highly performant, easy to learn and maintain,
Hmm.
and has built-in typing, which is really helpful for building financial products. And so
Hmm.
we were high conviction in building our backend in Go. And then our front end is TypeScript and Next.js and deployed using Vercel, because they're really technologies that are recent,
Hmm.
enable a lot of like fast prototyping and shipping, which at an early stage startup, it's, you have an idea, you want to experiment, you want to get it out, you want other people on the team to be able to go in and know what's happening.
Hmm.
But we did that. We chose kind of like that front end stack from an experimentation lens. And then the app we built is built in Swift.
So it's like a native Swift iOS app. And then you're using a Next.js sort of like React web front end.
Also, from our perspective, the front end stack isn't just for the mobile app we built;
Hmm.
it's also for the Ansa portal. And so we knew it's something that would have to scale for various size brands, whether you're 6,000 location coffee brand, able to add stuff like SSO, access controls, really easily be able to do, reporting and linking out and walk to run in terms of what that front end looks like, and really being able to care about the speed and flexibility as we built out the portal.
Yeah, no, I mean, like, it's so important. And I think like one thing that makes total sense to me, like, here at Square, we use Go, Java, Ruby, we're using a lot of React and Ember and other places. I know that like for Go as a backend, when you have like a financial product, I mean, you're going to find a lot of people within the fintech space are going to be familiar with Go. So as you scale up, you're not going to have as much difficulty in recruiting people and get them up to speed on your tech stack. So I imagine that's just like another nice benefit of choosing that from the beginning.
Yeah.
Great. So in terms of like features that you sort of like built and added over time, like what's sort of like the newest thing that you have that you're working on with Ansa?
Yeah. So we have a lot of new things. I'll
Hmm.
talk about two really. So one is our SDKs. So for brands that already have, say, a mobile app and maybe don't have the resources to build a direct API integration, we have both a core SDK if they want to own front end, and
Hmm.
our full SDK that they're able to kind of like brand and color, but has the full front end experience built out for them. So if you're a mid-sized brand, you can get live in minutes. We had someone implement it in 10 minutes, which is super exciting. And so that's one piece that we're really proud of on the developer experience side, of making sure no matter the size or scale of a brand, they have a way to benefit from closed loop wallets in our product. The other side we're really proud of and announced maybe a bit over a month ago is what we call Ansa Anywhere. And that's how you're able to accept a customer's digital wallet in store for a kind of like tap to pay payment at the point of sale.
Very
And
cool.
so what we've built there is it looks like a virtual card in Google Pay and Apple Pay, and is fully
Hmm.
point of sale agnostic. And so obviously it works seamlessly with the Square ecosystem. And that
Hmm.
means a customer, rather than having to pull up a QR code that may or may not load, and front of house staff having to buy scanners and remember to plug them in correctly and deal with barcodes and QR codes and everything there, it means you're able to line bust, have a really slick and easy customer experience, and just walk up and pay with your balance. And so we're really proud about that, because we care a lot about when you're trying to change anything about customer experience, like adopting a wallet, we want to change nothing else. And so tap to pay with Ansa Anywhere is a really exciting development for us.
I mean, it sounds awesome and it makes so much sense, like from a not developer experience, but from a buyer experience, because I think we've even learned that, and we've had our own fractionalization between different point of sale apps that we have, that there's a confusion. We should definitely like dig into it, because I think like we even learned that like trying to like scan a QR code or a barcode, we didn't even have that consistent between different point of sales, and like that creates this like level of confusion that like the employee might not understand why this isn't working. The buyer for sure is just like, they assume that it's like the business itself refusing to accept this thing that they have. And so like being able to just have it like very simply in a wallet, like you're just using Apple Pay like you normally would, and it just deducting is like creates the exact kind of experience that you want to curate for a buyer.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd love to touch on the experience that you ran into with the fractionalization that we have within like our various. I know like square for retail is not the same as square for restaurants, which is not the same as like the basic Square point
Square
of sale app.
Classic. Yeah.
Yeah.
We always call it Square Classic. I don't know if what the formal term is. We ran into it actually pretty early on because we had a customer that was running different apps in different locations and didn't know. And we also didn't know until we hit a product gap.
Mm-hmm.
And so we learned actually a lot about the core of the Square platform as we were kind of running around different product teams trying to figure out, is there a reason why there's this product gap? Is it coming soon? Do other people know? And that side of things. And so what we were trying to do was call up the QR code and try and find an easy way about a year ago for in-store payments, because what we built with Ansa Anywhere took about a year and a half to build and get out. And so we wanted a quick win solution for a lot of end customers wanting to use their balance in store with some Square merchants. And we found that you could pay with QR code, I think on Square Classic, but not on Square Retail. And I think it was this kind of interesting experience standing in the cafe with like the head of operations from this brand. Us, we had our laptop opens, I think, with like Square dev support and everyone, because I think so much of your tech does work so well. And because so much of the dev experience works so well, we all just kind of gaslit each other. Being like, there must be a reason. There must be a reason, or we're clicking the wrong button, or we just can't find it. And so that was kind of in retrospect, now that we kind of know a bit more about your systems, a bit comical because to your benefit, so much does work so well that when there's a gap, our first assumption was we're doing something wrong then, rather than there's a product gap here.
I think that you said it so perfectly right there, because like I've come across this in the various sellers that I've talked to, and I've helped try to like solve something personally. I would be the first to say that I'm not well versed in like all of the various like point of sales and their interactions, because I mostly like think and deal with like the API side of things, which is very agnostic of all of those interactions. But I've helped people who are like, hey, I'm trying to do this like barcode scanning in a particular thing, and I'm following the instructions here in our support documents, and I point out to them like, that's Square for Retail. You're a restaurant, like that's not, you're in the wrong support docs, and but it's like the design is so similar, and like it's I think the thing I always like to say about this is like, it's a great user experience. It's well designed, but it's really great until it's not. And then like all of a sudden you realize like all of the magic is kind of like fading away, and you're like, but I just really want to do this particular thing. And I feel like maybe I have to be wrong, but sometimes, it might actually be that, there's a miss on our side. And I know that like one of the big things that we're working on here is actually trying to unify a lot of the various point of sales and trying to consolidate into like one, like more consistent experience. Because I think at the end of the day, like you're going to end up realizing like a lot of businesses are kind of fluid in the way that they operate. Like, we've seen this in some of like the health and beauty space where like they're both a service, but then they also have a big retail component. And so what kind of point of sale are they supposed to use? I mean,
Yeah.
who knows? So, I think a lot of the time, like, I mean, even like, coffee shops are going to have like a retail component in addition to like the food and beverage that they're selling. So like, of course they want to be able to operate in both.
Yeah, exactly. But it's exciting to hear that there's some more unification coming soon, because I think that'll benefit a lot of folks.
Yeah, I'm very excited to get that out there, to like get a better streamlined experience. I mean, we've been doing a ton of work on just trying to optimize even just like the onboarding process to get things initially configured in a way so that you're like, hey, I can at least figure out how my system works more easily. In terms of like the SDKs and like the developer experience that you're offering to other folks, I'm curious in terms of like what the desire is for a customer is like to be able to like more seamlessly fold Ansa into like their own custom applications so that it's like more fitting within their brand. Like what level of like customization are they really looking for with Ansa?
Yeah, so that's we really have four integration paths.
Hmm.
And it's kind of choose your own adventure and choose your own effort is maybe a way to put it. So on the
Hmm.
as custom as possible side, there's our API integration where a brand owns all the front end experience, can build their own user flows, everything there. The next is the Ansa core SDK. And so that's for mobile specifically. And so that's so they don't have to wrap our APIs into the mobile environment, but they still own the front end experience, but can get live a bit quicker. Then there's the easy button version, which we spent a lot of time on. So it's actually a really powerful front end experience as well. But that includes the screens the customer sees, and the brand can
Hmm.
add their own logos and colors and some like cosmetic effects to make it feel branded. But they don't have to choose what the reload page looks like or choose
Hmm.
what the auto reload toggle shape is. We've decided all of that for them. And so kind of from the like what the mega enterprise might want to use down to the 40 location brand with a custom app, but no front end developers full time. That's what that looks
Yeah.
like. And then the fourth is we have some integrated partnerships, and so living within a lot of white label app platforms as the wallet of
Hmm.
choice that they can turn on. The app provider builds that experience using our APIs, but from the brand perspective, they don't have to invest any technical resources, which is really awesome.
I mean, I love to hear it because, like, I've always sort of like seen in a different case of like, there's like I don't want to say it's like necessarily like the 80-20, but like there's always like that balance between those that like, obviously in the enterprise side want like the heavy customizable, fully brandable, like they want every feature that they could imagine type thing. And then there's the other people like, I could not be bothered to build 90% of this. Please just give me like the fully baked solution where I can just add in like a couple things here and there. I'm curious on that. How do you balance like prioritization between the two? I mean, I always find like that's like the most difficult thing to really strike the right balance on.
It's difficult. I think focus is everything at a startup.
Mm-hmm.
And so we started with a very enterprise heavy approach. I think we were SOC 2 compliant as 5 people. We've been basically PCI compliant we've been PCI compliant since our first transaction. So we knew that we were building for enterprise scale longer term and enterprise software. And for us, the decision of where to balance is really from a go-to-market perspective of how can we help drive urgency and help reduce objections. And so
Mm-hmm.
for SMB and mid-market and like mid-sized brands, a lot of that is around technical resources and prioritization. And so we realized that actually spending additional time on not just building a core SDK, but building UI components we worked with one brand through it and realized even our team spent so many hours in a room helping them with design decisions that our head of solutions, myself, one of our lead engineers, and my co-founder, the CTO, probably spent a dozen hours walking them
Mm-hmm.
through and seeing all the decisions they were making in real time of, okay, what screen should go next? Should this be a toggle or a tick box? Like all of those things. And we realized every customer we're going to work with is going to have these exact same conversations and
Yep.
probably land at things that look pretty similar because there's a lot of new and delightful experiences to build in the world of mobile. The checkout page is not one of them anymore. And so
Mm-hmm.
there was a lot more like of an aha moment. And then for us, we really prioritized it from the perspective of timing. Of we knew we were going to invest a lot more heavily in this vertical and helping them launch quickly, and and so we were able to go out and find a really great iOS and Android developers to work with and bring it to market and design.
I think that's so great because it's like it kind of like goes back on that idea of like, we'll worry about payments so you don't have to. And like we'll worry about customer retention so you don't have to. Like it really tries like to really strike that part of like we care relentlessly about this for you. And so you don't have to be like sitting here making like all of these decisions. Like, and it ultimately like saves time, like because they can have a better product, they can have a better experience, and they're not having to sit there and like go through this whole. I mean, to have like that many people for like a dozen hours or more,
It's
like
expensive.
really, yeah, it's very expensive.
Yeah.
So it's great to be able to like codify that in a way that you can like actually give to people and be like, hey, here's your 80% solution. Like, and you just have to make smaller branding decisions.
Exactly. And I think one thing we talk about a lot at any size of company, but especially true on the enterprises, like with the right investment, a company the size of, say, Chipotle could build anything.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone can go hire great engineers and build anything if you have enough capital. But is that really where you want to invest it? Do you want to invest it in a feature like expiring balances, which we actually have a developer blog post on, which is really complicated? How you have different treat balances different ways, can expire certain funds, have different funds in the same wallet treated differently, and then also
Mm-hmm.
have to bear in mind accounting and financial regulations on top of it. We like building that stuff. We're good at building that stuff. There's not many restaurant brands that need the knowledge to know how to build that on top of a ledger. And so that's also part of our perspective as well, is we're able to free up a lot of time around the edges as well, where they can invest those time and resources on core differentiating product or expansion.
Great. This is probably a good place for us to wrap things up. Big thanks to Sophia Goldberg for joining us. I truly appreciate you being here and teaching us more about like Ansa, and where can somebody go to like learn a little bit more about Ansa if it's something that they want to like, they're interested in a closed loop wallet, maybe they're running a business, or maybe they just want to like look at you guys' SDKs and figure out like, hey, maybe this is something that's for me. Where can they go to go learn more about that?
Yeah, you can go to ansa.dev, ansa.dev to check out more, or you can just email hello@ansa.dev, and it's probably me who will get back to you.
Awesome. And for anything else, if you're interested in learning more about Square, be sure to reach out to us at developer.squareup.com. You can find links for our Discord. You can follow us on X. And be sure to subscribe here to learn more and hear more about stories from people like Sophia. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.